You, go on up to the festival, he's saying. As for me, I am not going up to this festival now, because the right time for me has not come yet. Having said this, he stayed on in Gilgal, which is the rolling hills. So in verse 14, not until the festival was half over did Yeshua go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. Not until the festival was half over did Yeshua go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. The Judeans were surprised. How did this man know so much without having studied, they asked. So Yeshua gave them an answer. My teaching is not my own. It comes from one who sent me. If anyone wants to do his will, he will know whether my teaching is from God or I speak on my own. A person who speaks on his own is trying to win praise for himself, but a person who tries to win praise for the one who has sent him is honest. There is nothing false about him. Anyway, he was saying that just because they thought he didn't know what he was talking about, he proved to them, I know this. You can't sit there and judge me. You know nothing about me. People like to think that they know who you are and know nothing about you. Just because you work with people, you think you know them. You don't know them. Nobody knows you like Yeshua knows you. And we always like to put a picture on somebody or how they are because of how they are at work. Like, I realize that everybody has their own set of issues, and what it looks like isn't always what it is. So like this situation, it was I was watching something on TV, and they were looking at how people react to certain situations based on the appearance of people. And there was this man, and he had like jeans, a sweatshirt, like urban type look. And there's a bunch of people, it's like in the city, he begins to cough. Cough, drops to his knees. People are watching this happen, and the man falls down. Everybody walked over him, didn't say anything, didn't ask if he was okay, just left him there. The same man changes his clothes, puts a suit and a jacket on, does the same thing, the coughing, falls on his knees and falls down. And all these people ask, are you okay? Are you okay? Because his look made them assume that he was somebody other than who he was. And we do that a lot. We assume that somebody has an issue, or they're on drugs, or just because they look a certain type of way, they have a certain type of characteristic, and we don't know. We have to stop assuming, because that very man who was in those sweatpants or a t-shirt, whatever he had on, could have been a lawyer or a doctor out for a jog or out for a run, who has something in his hand to bless you because you came to his aid. But we like to judge, and we think, and I think a lot of times we feel as though because we may look a certain type of way, or we have some type of faith, or we have a little bit of word, that we have the authority to look at somebody else and judge them because their situation looks different than our situation looks. And that's when we assume, because we see something, what we believe it is, and it's not even the case. We have to do some investigation, because we're not the ones to judge. Yeshua's the judge. Adonai's the judge. And when we try to judge people, it's not right, because it's not we shouldn't be doing it. Let's do 2 Peter 3:16. Did I do that one already? Indeed, he speaks about these things in all his letters. They contain some things that are hard to understand, things which the uninstructed and unstable distort to their own destruction, as they do the other scriptures. But you, dear friends, since you know this in advance, guard yourselves so that you will not be led away by the errors of the wicked and fall from your own secure positions. And that's what we do. When we put our judgment on somebody else, we're not living by the scripture, and we're destroying our own self. We can't pass judgment on others. Oh. So we can't pass judgment on other people, and it's those people who are unstable and distort stuff. Like even, well, I'm sure when you were younger, you used to play this, people sit around the circle and it's called like Whisper Down the Lane, and somebody says one thing and they hear what they hear and they tell somebody else. By the time it gets all the way around the corner, it's a whole different story. And that's what we do with other people. If you judge someone, if I'm judging someone and I'm gonna tell somebody else how I feel about this person, well, they do X, Y, and Z, it goes back to somebody else and the story gets all over the place. I was talking to one of my family members over the weekend, and she had her own opinion, and she's going on, why she doesn't like this person's husband and their boyfriend because they did X, Y, and Z. And in my mind, I didn't say anything because she has her own opinion. She can feel however she wants to feel about anybody. But when you sit there and talk about somebody else and their situation, you're judging them. You're judging them, and you're making it as though you're better. I'm no better than you or you or you. I'm no better than anybody. We have to judge ourselves. The word says judge yourself. We have to pray to judge ourselves. We don't have the authority to judge anybody else just because somebody looks a certain type of way or you think a certain type of way about somebody else. It's none of our business. If anything, how about you intercede for them and build that person up if you think they're a certain type of way, you think they have some type of an issue. We waste too much time and we dig ourselves in ditches when we look at somebody else and judge people. We have no business doing it. Waste too much time. Let's see this one. This is true of people. That's all I wrote, so let's see what it says. 1 Kings 14:5. And sorry, I should have been a little more prepared, but I was laid up for 2 days, so my words like all over the place. I like to be typed up and looking good, but not this time around, so I apologize, y'all. I'm a little more organized than this normally. 1 Kings chapter 14. 1 Kings 14, verse 5. Adonai told Achia, Yarovam's wife, is on her way to you to ask about her son who is ill. You are to tell her thus and thus. Moreover, when she comes, she will be pretending she is another woman. Wow. Okay. I don't know. When Achia heard the sound of her feet as she came to the door, he said, "Enter, wife of Yarom. Why pretend you are someone else? I've been given bad news for you. Go tell." I don't know. At any rate, it says she's gonna pretend she's somebody else. I really don't know where I was going with that one. But the fact that she has to pretend to be somebody else, she's lying. And she's trying to get over somehow. Why do you have to pretend to be somebody else? Obviously, she's trying to get something that really wasn't rightfully hers in the first place. Whenever you have to pretend or do something that ain't who you are, you're trying to get over. Why can't you just be who you are, state your claim, or do whatever you have to do? You don't have to pretend and joke around. In the end, it's gonna come out in the end. You don't have to joke. False assumptions leads to error. Proverbs 18:13. To answer someone before hearing him out is both stupid and embarrassing. How many times when people are talking, I do that a lot because I think I know. If maybe my husband's telling me something, I'm like, oh, I know, that's what you're saying. And I cut them off like as if I know what he was trying to say. And they're like, no, it's not what I meant. Some people you need to hear the whole story before you just jump into things and start talking. Like you don't know what they're gonna say. You assume you think what they're gonna say. You don't know. You don't know. So you're stupid. It's stupid and embarrassing to answer someone out without hearing them out. Stupid. Wow. Thank you. I have scriptures, but I didn't really write what it is down, so I apologize. I have a couple more scriptures, and I guess that'll be about it. Oh, let's go to Matthew's 20 and 10. Matthew chapter 20. This is a good one. So I could read the whole thing, but I'm not. So it says verse 10. So the workers who came first expected they would get more, but each of them also received just a denarius. So here's a bunch of guys who went out to work, and the farmer agreed to pay them a certain amount of money. So it was a certain group, but they went out first and they did their work, and he said, okay, well, I'm going to give you a certain amount of money. They agreed to that. So there was a couple other people who were scattered around, and then maybe the second shift, they said, you want work? And they said, yeah. He said, okay, well, you go out. So it was about 3 different groups, and each of them went out at different times. Well, at the end of the day, the farmer gave the people who started first their portion of money, and then the second people and the third people, he gave them all the same amount of money. And the workers who got in first were mad. We're like, well, how did they get the same amount of money? We were out there slaving, we were working hard. And the farmer says, who are you to tell me how I'm gonna give money to? You agreed to work for this certain amount of money. And now you see that I'm giving these people the same amount of money as you. Now you got a problem with it? You agreed to that. So now because you see I'm giving somebody else the same amount of money that you got, and now you have a problem with it, why should I give you more when you agreed to this pay even before the day was done? So some people feel as though they need to have more because we're doing the same amount of work. Don't assume that this man who hired you is going to give them less because they started less. You agreed to that. And we want to get mad about stuff like that. How are you going to be mad when you agreed to work for $5 an hour and the person next to you who doesn't have as much experience also gets $5 an hour? You agreed to that. So we just assume that the people who started later were going to get paid less. And who knows, that man could have hooped and hollered and got smart with the farmer, and the farmer could have been like, I don't want you here anymore. Don't come back because you have an attitude. Assuming gets you in trouble. Their assumption was that more was due based on their own reasoning. Their own reasoning was, well, I should get more. Well, the farmer's reasoning was, you don't. Say truth causes division as well. Some people don't want to hear the truth. Some people don't want to hear the truth at all. And the truth of the matter was that these people got paid the same amount as the first group, and they were salty about it, and it causes division. These first group might be mad because the second and third group got paid got the same amount of money, and they're irritated. So that's truth, and they're irritated. So we can go to 1 Kings 18. First Kings 18 and 21. Elihu stepped forward before all the people and said, how long are you going to jump back and forth between 2 positions? If Adonai is God, follow him. And if it's Baal, follow him. The people answered him, not a word. Then Elihu said to the people, I alone am the only prophet of Adonai who is left, while Baal prophets number 450. Let him give us 2 young bulls, and they can choose the bull they want for themselves. Then let them cut it into pieces and lay it on the wood, but put no fire under it. I will prepare the other bull, lay it on the fire, and put no fire under it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of Adonai, and the God who answers with fire, let him be God. And all the people answered, good idea, agreed. So after they got the 2 bulls and laid them on the altars, this other group's hooping and hollering, and Elihu's like, why don't you just yell a little louder? You know, he can't hear you, just hooping out. Yell a little louder, cutting themselves or acting a fool, trying to get their God to light this fire under this animal. And so all he did was say a nice little prayer. God, I believe you. I know you can do it. Show these people who you are so they can believe in you too. And the fire started. And not only that, he poured so much water over this altar so it was saturated. So it was by the hand of God that the fire started. But some people need to see things to know. Some people have to see it. It shouldn't always be that way, but some people need to see it for themselves. God is who he is, and he's going to come forth. But these people who, the little g God, they just knew their God was going to do it. And they had enough faith to act stupid and hoop and holler, but when they realized that that ain't who it is, and this is the God who they're going to serve, it went a different way. But that assumption will kill you. Dug them into a ditch, and their burnt offering wasn't burnt because it didn't light on fire. So assuming, don't be a donkey. Assuming can get you in trouble. We have to live our life, living it for us and not judging others and not being hateful, not forgiving people. But we can't judge. Everybody has their own situation. And if I look at somebody and say, they're this type of way because I think it is what it is, it's not always what it looks like. So assuming is not good.
So you say do is ask questions.
You should ask questions. You should. I mean, if it's not going to offend somebody to get all in their business, it would be. But you can't assume that it is what it is if you don't know. True. And we do it a lot. We assume that, oh my gosh, like you see somebody with filthy clothes on or on the streets or begging, you assume they're lazy or they're on drugs or they got some issues going on. And that's not always the case at all. So assuming is just not great. It's not good. Our faith should be based on evidence, not on what we think.
True.
Like that evidence of me checking that text in that time of my daughter's dentist appointment. Or checking that computer and knowing what type of aligners the lady should have. Evidence. Sometimes it's not what we think we know. It's what it is we should know.
And I think it goes back to how we assume that we should know stuff about our spouse or
yes.
friends or
yes.
we assume that they should know.
Right.
And most of the time they don't.
That's so true. Just because you live with somebody, you assume that, well, they do it this time all the time. I'm sure it's done now. Or they did it before like this, so I'm just going to assume it's, again. Can't assume. You just can't. You got to ask questions. If you don't know, you just don't know. You don't assume. You can't. Like somebody who don't, like my son doesn't have a car now. So he can assume every day that his dad or myself is going to get up and take him to work. He can assume that all day, every day. Don't mean I'm getting up. Don't mean his dad's getting up. You got to ask questions. You got to figure this thing out. You ain't got no car. You got to ask some questions. You cannot assume that people are going to be there to do things for you if you just don't know. I can't assume I'm going to get paid when it's a state of emergency. And I can't get to work.
That's true.
Any questions? I'm sorry I don't have it's all jumbled together. I'm just kind of jacked up. Okay, thanks.
Any questions, she said? I think what's deep too is that Yahweh doesn't assume about us.
Right.
He asks us questions. He asks us questions. Even in his word, he does. So, he don't assume. That's why he makes it clear. And, yeah.
You know what? In John chapter 7, there was a couple words. It was, let me see if I can find it, because I thought the words were cool. Ba'it Lechem, Lechem is the house of bread, and that's where Yeshua was coming from. I thought that was really cool. And then the Perushim, I didn't know what the Perushim meant, and that means separate.
Pharisee, yeah.
So that was cool. And then I want to find it. And then there's one word, the Haaretz, means ignorant or boorish person. So to whoever comes from I am Aharetz is ignorant or boorish person, and this town was known for like upscale people, and they have like, and to call somebody I am Aharetz ignorant or boorish person is really disrespectful to call them.
So I ain't Christian.
and there was a Nakdiman, a person called Nakdiman, and it means bringer of illumination. And he was the one who was talking to Yeshua. So I just thought, bringer of illumination, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
So it's cool to look up the words. If I don't know, it's deep. The meanings are
It brings it out.
different. Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, it's on there.
I guess one you could look at is the 5 that were wise and 5 that were foolish. The other ones assumed that one, they were going to share the oils with them, or we had enough to make it. So you really can't assume that you have what you really don't have. You have to really, I guess, make your call and election sure and be
Got that
very
right.
sure that you really do have enough oil and keep it trimmed and burning. So, yeah.
Thinking about the word assumption, we assume a lot. Almost every day we assume a whole lot. You know what I mean? We assume we're gonna make it to work and make it home.
Truth.
We assume, you know what I mean? We assume a whole lot, but we never stop and think, you know what? It's Yahweh's grace and mercy that's getting us through the day. But we assume we're gonna get up and get through the day.
Wow.
That, you know what? When you just said that, I was thinking, boy, we assume a whole lot. We take a lot for granted, but
Yeah, we do.
because we assume it's just gonna happen. You know what I mean? We just assume it. We got up, so we assume we're gonna make it through that whole day. But you know, there are people that thought they were gonna make it through the whole day, but they didn't. You know, so that's kind of deep.
I was always taught that when we were younger, my grandma would say, make your bed. Make sure you don't got nothing on the floor, because you never know. You might leave home walking, but you never know how you're going to come back in and who's going to have to bring you home. So that was something we always assumed, that when you went out, you have a good measure of strength, but she would always teach us that you never know how you're going to return home and who's going to have to come with you. So you always try to make sure your house is presentable, your bed's made, and you got on everything you're supposed to. Because you have strength now, in the next hour, it doesn't mean that you're going to have it. And that's, to me, that's deep, because even when we do anything, we really do. Like, even if I go to the store, I take for granted now, come a little bit further, that I always have enough money. And I went to the store the other day, and I only took one card in with me. Well, I had to do a lot of shopping. It was on a Sunday. No, maybe it was, I think it was Sunday. And so I had to do a lot of shopping. I only took one card in, and my card was shot by like one. They were like, oh, you have a balance of one something. And I was like, I'm not going back to the card, just put something back. But I had assumed that I didn't do that much damage. But you know, when you have the holes on the gas, it holds your money up. So I was like, I'm not going back to the car. Just put, I need those fortune cookies, put them back. So but I automatically assumed and took for granted. Like, I haven't done that in a while. You know, when's the last time I maxed something out? But I assume everything. I pretty much do. I pretty much do. I will pick an argument over an assumption.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I do. So it's really deep. Yeah, because I like, even when Saturday I didn't make it here, I was late. I had my husband he didn't get snappy with me, but he had said something the way I didn't like it. So, and it really, all he was tired. So I assumed that when you like didn't answer me the way I thought you should, that you really were saying I want to go home. So I immediately took him home because I assumed he needed more rest. And my assumption was, you need to be where you need to be because you need sleep. You can't be out like that. But he would have probably rather have went to a service and taken time. My assumption was you need rest. And it's funny because over just a small bit, you can assume something and totally misjudge it and miss the whole thing, just assuming. Because a lot of times we've been married so long, I can answer his sentences.
Exactly.
And I think, and before you say, I said, you don't have to say anything, but sometimes I miss the whole mark.
It's true.
And I missed the whole mark, or the gift will take me somewhere that I really shouldn't be because it wasn't that serious. Yeah, over an assumption. So, yeah, it was really deep tonight.
And that's crazy, because at my job, we deal with a lot of appliances, putting things in and out of people's mouths. We have to take impressions, make things for them. Well, there's been many a times when we didn't have the appliance in at a certain time, and our doctor would be like, well, just, I don't know, I'm on TV, maybe I shouldn't be saying it. So there's been times when I had to like
You had to
pretend.
improvise.
Yeah. And I didn't like that, improvising. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I told him, I'm not doing that. You need to do that. Why should I have to be the one to do that? I believe that if you tell people the truth, that they will receive the truth and say, it's my mistake, I'm sorry, than fabricating something that's not even the case, and then it falls back on you later. I would want somebody to be honest with me. Even though I go somewhere and something's not there, I'd rather than be like, I apologize, it was my fault. I dropped that ball, right? And how can I make it up to you? Give them something. I mean, there's ways to fix things than lying to people. I don't think anybody wants to be lied to. It might sound good for a minute to cover your behind, but whose behind are you really covering? I think being truthful covers that.
If you really think about it, the reason why we assume so much, and it's a part of our daily lives and it's part of our first thought, is that we as a society has been trained to be time consumption, all about time management. Just imagine if you thought about everything that you had to do, how much time you would waste if you stopped assuming things. If you just wiped out all the assumption, it would take you more time to get something done. So I believe that's why the first thought is to assume something, because it cuts that time in half. Because it's always a hurry thing, you know?
But then you
But
gotta
that's something, you
turn
gotta fix
around
that thing.
and do it over again anyway.
Because you assumed it.
So you still waste time.
You still waste time, but
Yeah.
we're so trained to just,
Yeah.
I want to hurry up and get to where I got to go. Like one day I was leaving work and at the Wachovia Center, when the show's over, usually when there's a show, they have buses that carry the groups, and the buses park right outside the gate. So you can actually walk out the garage and through the gate out to the parking lot, instead of having to walk up to the second floor and walk down the sidewalk, another sidewalk to get to the parking lot. So whenever the show's over, I always just go right out the gate. And I assumed at this time that it was open because that's the way I always go. And when you go that way, you get to the parking lot in no time. It's like a minute, it's like 3 minutes to do all that other stuff. So when I went down, and you got to go up a little hill, and then when I went up the little hill, there were no buses, and the gate was locked. So I had to turn around and walk back into the building and go up the steps and walk down the sidewalk, the other sidewalk, get to my car.
So you assumed they were back.
Yeah,
I just thought about something as far as assuming, and I was totally wrong because I assumed I had put a garment in the cleaners, and they have a 30-day policy or something that you have to let them know something's wrong. Well, I put it in the cleaners, you know, early on, maybe in the spring, okay? I got it out the cleaners, and it may have sat in the closet for a month or so before I decided to wear it. Well, when I went to go to wear it, it hadn't been pressed properly. So I went back to the cleaners, and you know, I was nice about it at first. And you know, and I said to the woman, I said, I have a problem. I went to wear, you know, this garment, and I said, and it's not pressed. So she was like, well, we have this 30-day policy, and being that it's past the policy, I can't do anything. So right away, my flesh, excuse me? I understand you have a policy, but you can put clothes in the cleaners, and you may not wear them right away. So why is it that, so you're telling me that I paid for a service, and you can't do anything about it? So she was like, well, let me check. And, you know, I'm standing there, and I'm getting a little heated. You know, I'm like, but the bottom line is that you didn't provide the proper service, and I paid for it. And then I had put some comforters in for my son, and when he went to use the comforters, he didn't have the shams. Well, you know, already the mind is, you know, twirling. You know, my change is going, and I'm like, okay, you done messed up with the comforters. Okay, you didn't give me back the shams. That was over 40 days ago. So now you're telling me that there's nothing you can do. And I'm like, hold it. Somebody gonna have to do something, okay? Because you're not gonna tell me that because of your policy, you can't do nothing about it. So I took a deep breath, and I'm standing there and I'm looking at the woman. Somebody else came in the cleaners, and the guy's hearing what I'm saying. He turns around and goes back out the door. So she said, well, what I'll do is I'll take it and try to repress it. So I said, okay, fine. Left it, went back. Well, when I went back to get it, they still didn't press it right. So I said to her, you know what you could do is you could just give me my money back, and you know, we can call it a day. And in the meantime, can you find the shams that went with the comforter? Okay. A few days go past, she's telling me, you know, to call back. I said, okay, is this the correct number to call? Because when I call, ringing at that time, and then you can let me know if you found the pillow shams. You know, that's all right. I'm just gonna take my money and I'm gonna leave. Because she gave me my money back. But then when I got outside, I thought about it. Because I use my card, you charge an extra fee. Well, come to find out, they had given us the shams, the pillow shams, right? Okay, so I hadn't called her back, but I'm gonna tell you what I did do. Yesterday, I saw, you know, because and apologize because that was the right thing for me to do, so I could free myself up and not block no blessing that's trying to come.
Okay.
Yes, but I assume.
All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, we can close out. All right, online people, let's close out. Father, we thank you in the name of Yeshua.
Thank you, Father.
Father, the ability to not assume and to find out the real information before we just put a judgment on somebody, Father. In the name of Yeshua, we magnify you and we glorify you, and we thank you in advance for every good thing that you are doing for us in our lives, and we give you the highest praise. Hallelujah. And we say amen.
I mean.